Producer Patrick has been following me around. I joke with my wife that's probably going to end up on my tombstone. And the one thing I love about Africa is there's so much storytelling here. We had the strikes in Hollywood. That was the writer's strike and the actor's strike. And after the strikes, we noticed there was a huge slowdown in Hollywood production. Just spoke at Avi Josie, and you know what? Now I know a shitload of producers in South Africa. And now it's like, hey, I know you guys.
Welcome to Just Speak, the Sean Naidu podcast. And if you're finding us for the first time, thank you for taking a minute out of your day to listen to what it is that we have to say. We're very excited here today at our podcast because we have an opportunity that is absolutely once in a blue moon. I won't say once in a lifetime, but certainly once in a blue moon. We stumbled upon it and we seized the moment, and here we are. We are joined by a gentleman that is fast becoming a significant voice. I mean, he's already a significant voice, but he's exponentially growing in the film and television space. And if you don't know him already, you're about to. And I certainly am sure you're going to be following him after this. His name is Producer Patrick. His name is not Producer Patrick, but he goes by Producer Patrick. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Yes, it's Producer Patrick has been following me around. I joke with my wife that's probably going to end up on my tombstone in the end now. But you know, it's become a little bit more than just me. It's become sort of an idea of what's really happening in our industry, to really kind of create a forum for filmmakers, for creatives to come and really kind of discuss how our industry is evolving, whether that's through AI, whether that's through a slowdown of production, or what is, media going to look like in the future. We see the rules are changing. What used to be, Hollywood's compartmentalized rules, a film is this, a television show is this, but now with social media, a film doesn't have to be 90 minutes anymore. It doesn't have to be horizontal. It can be vertical. Mm-hmm. We can see all these massive changes happening. And sometimes everybody who actually works in the industry now just wants to keep up with it, or wants to at least have an understanding or an idea of where it's going, so you could be at the forefront of what's coming next.
Yeah, man, I totally agree. But Producer Patrick is now, like you said, it's become a character almost for your social media platform. But forgive me?
Yes.
Say your surname?
Caligiuri.
Caligiuri.
Yes.
I wanted to get that right. I was reading it and I came at it.
It's Italian, so it's one of those things where you look at it and it's terrifying to look at. But it's Cali, like California, and jury, like a trial jury. And that's the easy way to say it. But, I had an Italian father. I had an Irish mother, so her maiden name was Brady, which would have made my life a lot easier, especially restaurant reservations. So I actually go with Brady on restaurant reservations.
Oh, wow. Yeah, Caligiuri. Okay, cool. Now, often when you get somebody's name and it's difficult to say, I'll be like, you got to write that down for me. I had it written down and I couldn't get it, so I'm glad we got that one correct.
Got it off the bat. So that's why we stick with Producer Patrick.
Yeah, so Producer Patrick makes it easy. But taking it a step back, so you started this online presence that has now grown into what we see. Mm-hmm. But take us back to that first moment. I know we were talking offline about it a little bit, but just talk us through how you just jumped into the space and what's become Producer Patrick.
It's been a kind of a long road, but it didn't come out of, oh my gosh, I want to start a Instagram Reels, or I wanted to start like my own channel or anything like that. It actually came out of necessity for the industry. So we had the strikes in Hollywood. That was the writer's strike and the actor's strike. And after the strikes, we noticed there was a huge slowdown in Hollywood production. And I worked in unscripted, so I was a producer on The Amazing Race, Big Brother, Naked and Afraid, American Idol. I've been a producer in the industry for about 20 years, at least in the U.S. Unscripted industry. And I was around for the writer's strike that was in 2007, 2008. And when that happened, we saw the boom of reality television. 2008, that was when you got the Kardashians. That's when you got this massive influx of reality shows, some good, bad, and ugly, but that was really where that kind of genre of television took off. And so when we heard that the writers were striking again in 2023, many of us, my colleagues in the unscripted industry, are like, okay, well, we're probably going to get to work again because we're a non-union industry and these are the unions that are striking. So when the unions are striking, there's still going to be a need for content. But what had changed was streaming had taken over. Back in 07, 08, you had, I guess you could say, analog television. You had time slots to fill. You need something from 8 to 8:30. But now you don't really need that anymore. You have a la carte television. I can go on Netflix and choose whatever movie or television show I want to watch at whatever time is convenient for me. And that really had changed the industry. And many of us were kind of unknowing or maybe even naive to it. So all of a sudden, the strikes happen, and we in the unscripted industry sort of became the canaries in the coal mine because all of a sudden it was silent on our end. The networks weren't buying, and it was like, why isn't anything going on? And one of the things about Hollywood is this fear of being blacklisted, of being out, because when you're out and unwanted, that is like the worst feeling that could ever happen. And so the rule of Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club. So no one in the industry is ever going to say, I'm out of work, or I can't find anything right now, because it makes it sound like something is bad with you, something's wrong with you. So we all kind of speak in this tongue-in-cheek type of discussions like, hey, do you have anything going on? Oh yeah, I got a few things in the works and I got plates spinning. And as the months went on, that type of discussion that I'm having with my colleagues, who are many friends who are producers, it started turning more dire. And all of a sudden, these talks started becoming more real. And these aren't just like colleagues that I knew. These were my mentors. These were people that I always called to find a job or who would hire me or at least, have even more connections than I do. And all of a sudden, the calls became, dude, I don't know. I'm literally can't pay my mortgage next month. I'm dipping into my kid's college fund. I had another colleague say they were selling off inherited jewelry. I had another colleague say they were selling their house and moving in with a cousin, back east. And it's like, what the hell is going on? And the more dire it got, it started becoming worse. And I saw a lot of this because I'm an executive producer. So many crew members come to me, looking for work. And I got an email from a very dear friend who was a director of photography. And it was a very desperate email of, I really can't find anything. I need work. I don't know what to do. And a month later, that colleague took his own life. And that was a catalyst moment for me where I said, something needs to happen. The trades aren't talking about this. This wasn't in Deadline or the Hollywood Reporter, but everybody in the industry knows that there's no work, that Hollywood is shut down. And the thing about saying it out loud is scary. It's terrifying. But I had gotten to a point now where it's been a year and 3 months since I personally had found work. And since my last project. And before that, for 20 years, probably the most I was in between gigs, maybe 2 months. So something was wrong. And I think it was either out of frustration or a point of saying, like, I don't think my job is coming back. I got frustrated. I was going to go for a hike because I live in Northern California and was hoping to release some endorphins and get out and get into some nature and just find some healing. And it just started downpouring right when I got to the park. And I was just kind of like, fuck it. And I whipped out my phone and I just ranted. And I ranted online and I was like, this is what's happening to the industry. And, mic drop, I'm out. And then all of a sudden, the one thing you were never supposed to do, my agent called me. He's like, dude, you're committing career suicide. What are you doing? But the opposite happened. Everything that you were told for 20 years, don't do this, don't ever say this, don't talk about the industry, you're going to get kicked out. But the elephant in the room had gotten so big, everybody was feeling pushed against the wall, but still not talking about it. So I got this tsunami of support all of a sudden. Cinematographers, directors, people in the film industry, people in the TV industry, people in unscripted, in talk shows, in news. We're all just breathing this sigh of relief, like, thank God this guy finally said it. And as I kept trying to maybe like, okay, maybe I'll talk a little bit more about this. And the industry was still contracting and collapsing. So I had colleagues that worked in the film and TV industry that I knew from college because I went to a film and television school. So many people actually ended up actually having really great jobs, but they would be like executives at Lionsgate or Netflix, and then they would get fired. And then they would send me a message like, Patrick, keep going, keep doing it, keep saying it, keep saying the real thing. And so I kept talking and kept saying it. And then I actually had started off in news. I had my career before I became an unscripted television producer. I worked in New York in broadcast news. So my first job out of college was to cut news packages. And it was skills that I had developed over 20 years. I had learned to write. I had learned to edit. I had learned to shoot. And I was pretty comfortable in front of the camera because I did some TikToks about like how unscripted shows are made, you know, Big Brother, you know, you film behind a mirror, there's cameras behind it, like really simple stuff. But then it's like, you know what, I now have purpose. And for some reason, people felt connected to me. I also wanted to make sure that for many of us in the industry who work so many long hours, and it's hard to explain to other people because you love what you do, you're so passionate with what you do, that when you almost identify as your job. So, which I think is also what happened to my friend, where he's like, if I'm not a director of photography, then who am I? And I wanted to make sure that my colleagues knew, especially when lives were on the line and people were getting to this point of extreme desperation, that your life has more value. You are not your job. You know, there are people that love you. There are people that care about you. You know, just because something has changed in the way that you make your means, even though it's a passion for you, it's not worth something this dire, you know? So let's get together and let's collaborate. And I think through the pain, many of us who work in production, like if you're a creative, you're going to create. And that was, I think, the message I wanted to get out was, hey guys, even though it's stopped, let's keep our passion going. Just because a network isn't buying your script or a movie isn't being produced or you're not getting hired for your day-to-day job as a gaffer or a sound mixer or a camera op, you know, now's the time to, you know, dust off that script. Or if you're with a bunch of buddies and you want to make a short film, go make it. Right now, we're in this era of evolution. And what's interesting about our industry, especially the film and television industry, is it has always been technologically evolving, except for us, since the 1980s, nothing had changed. It had become status quo. But if you think about it, like in the early 20th century, we had silent films go to sound go to color. Then all of a sudden we had radio collapsed by television. And then everything was pretty normal. You know, maybe in the 1990s we got CGI, but that only helped advance storytelling. But now we are in an era of television, film to internet, and the younger generation, Gen Z, which is also making this a perfect storm, they're not consuming film and television. They're consuming everything on their phone or media different ways through podcasts, like what we're doing right now. And podcasts have become the new talk shows. And so it's like, it's time to know that our industry is evolving. And maybe if there's a way that I could help guide people, either if it's in short blips or through understanding of how it's evolving, you know, we can maybe even evolve ourselves to continue working in this industry that we love.
Sure. There's so much there that I wanted to, like, I'm literally tracking questions that I'm going to need to get at you. But the first thing I wanted to ask is just, you know, keeping it in that vein of how the crews and the people in the space started to struggle. Did you find that it was due to there not being work, full stop, or that there wasn't work in that geographical region? So really, was it an industry-wide thing, or was it just that jobs were leaving LA?
So it was a little mixture of both. And, I can't speak for what the studio decisions have been, but for some time, there's what they call runaway production. And it was first domestic, where we had, in the United States, how we do tax incentives, it's not like a country does. We don't have a federal tax incentive. We do it by states. So states compete with each other to offer better deals. And a tax incentive is a rebate that you would get. So if you spend, $10 million on a show, you might get $2 million back. And so that's very, for a producer who's trying to save budget, those incentives can cause you to move or change. And it first happened with Atlanta, which is in Georgia, which has the best tax incentives in all of the United States. And so all of a sudden there was this film frenzy in Georgia, and they built studios, massive studios with like 40 sound stages. And they almost threw them up overnight. They have a lot of land. The regulations weren't as tough as California. And so that's when we started seeing Marvel films. They took over what they call Trilla Studios, and that's where they filmed Superman and basically every Marvel movie you can think of. Even Francis Ford Coppola did his Megalopolis there. And so all of a sudden we started seeing productions leaving Los Angeles, and California is probably one of the most expensive states. We also had seen a lot of moves up to Canada, but until then it was still like, okay, well, if they're filming in Georgia, maybe I'll go film in Georgia and then I'll come back and live in LA. It was still manageable. But now we got to a point where, in much of the same way the US auto industry was with Detroit, where all of a sudden the manufacturing is now going out of country and it's going to places that are much cheaper. But even though they're cheaper, the crews are still fantastic, great crews. And they're finding this in Eastern Europe, like Bulgaria became a big place to shoot, or Czech Republic, or even Thailand, where you're getting like 30 cents on the dollar and you're getting just the same skilled labor. And again, from a producing point of view, it makes no sense to, keep a production on a soundstage. And now you're starting to see American shows actually filming in Ireland. I have a dear friend who's a producer who goes and flies to Dublin to oversee American shows, and they send the cast over there. So there's actually no production going on. And you see producers that complain, to like, I'm on the Fox lot, and it's crazy to know that they are choosing not to film in the soundstage, but to actually fly over to Ireland because it's still cheaper than just filming on the soundstage here in Los Angeles. And so that was the runaway production. And of course, on top of that, it's amplified by the fact that Gen Z is not watching film and television. And that's kind of Hollywood's fault too, because for some reason, Hollywood kind of stopped at millennials and they kept kind of catering to that generation. But if you look at Gen Z, where we grew up with John Hughes, we had Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, we had Wonder Years, we had shows that spoke to teen angst, what it was like growing up and understanding the world we lived in. But Gen Z didn't have that. So where did they go? They're still looking for meaning, for relationship, for compatibility. And so they went and they found it online. They found it through their peers who were performing, and that's where they started finding meaning. And so Hollywood kind of dropped the ball with catering to a younger generation. Now, on top of that, the next thing, so I'm saying it's a perfect storm of many things.
Yes.
You also have the tech industry that is now taking over the studios. Netflix is a tech industry. Apple, even though they're creating amazing television, it's still a software company. Amazon is a retailer. These are not studios. These are all businesses. And these businesses are being run by non-creatives. And the non-creatives, they're looking at the bottom line, and they can't understand how the sausage is made. They are saying, I don't understand why you have 20 writers in a writer's room? Why can't you just use 2 writers? Why do you need 2 weeks to come up with a script? Why can't you do it in a couple days? They couldn't understand the creative process. Meanwhile, if you look back in the 90s and the 80s, when you actually had creatives who were heads of these studios or networks, like Cheers had a horrible first season. Seinfeld had a horrible first season, but because they had executives that understood that it's not an overnight process to find an audience, sometimes you have to let something breathe. But if you know the product is good, people eventually gravitate to it. That type of thinking is over now. Now it's a need of instant monetization. And if it's not making money, then we got to cut it and move on to the next thing. So for good, right, or wrong, that has also made the industry suffer, and it also made the product even worse because now the studios are risk averse. I don't want to try something new because if it fails, it becomes a red line in our budget. So why don't we just go with what works? So let's do another Spider-Man reboot. It makes sense because people love Spider-Man. They love IP. Everything has to be intellectual property, something that is brand recognizable versus something that is completely unrecognizable. And so now you have this kind of like a system that is not very creative, that is regurgitating almost the same meal over and over again, and the audience is getting bored with it. So you see like the summer where Ryan Coogler came out with Sinners, and it felt like a breath of fresh air. And it was a story that was good. And it really comes down to storytellers. And many of us creatives understand that. It's always about the story. And it's always about how you tell a story. And if you know how to do that, that is the measurement of success. But for people that don't understand storytelling, it's a lot different.
What I find fascinating, though, is when it comes to, we don't see people anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about people in audience terms, like, they're an audience. You talk about the tech companies starting, Amazon starting Prime and Apple, et cetera, as an independent filmmaker myself, the only mission I'm ever on is raising funding to get things made.
Right.
And it takes forever to do.
Yes.
In 10 plus years of being a film producer trying to make film, feature films. My first feature only got made because myself, together with 2 other partners, got together and put our own money into it. And, it's like something they say never do,
right.
Put your own money into your film because it's risky and all of that. But it was never going to happen because it would be wonderful if we could find, angel investors,
yes.
people with deep pockets, people that have success in their world, like in South Africa, there's a lot of mining success, people that are really, really big and millionaires, billionaires, that money is coming from things like mining and from telecommunications and whatever. So, and the kind of money that you could throw into film is not big money. So when these guys are talking investments, their research and development budgets aren't as big as what films need, especially in South Africa. You talk about the cost to produce is low here. And it would be nice, again, if these deep pocket individuals would support us as opposed to, like Amazon and them did, go start your own thing.
Right.
Now, is that an ego thing? Is that people that have seen this model exist and rather than support it, rather than come in and, guide it through your own business acumen
right.
and enable it, they've gone and started competing entities against it.
Yes.
Is that now because we as people don't know how to play nice together?
It's an interesting thought because when it comes to funding, and I think this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, I think people now look at it as investments as what is my return and how quickly do I get my return? And that patience is gone. Like it seems to me that, well, let me back up for a second. So there's other studios that are trying new methods because, well, let's look at some of the studios now, right? Because they're putting all their eggs in one basket. They're saying the marketing for film now is just so much to cut through the noise that we have to invest $200 million into one movie and make sure that it is a hit. But even with all the AI and algorithms and studies and focus groups, they still can't predict a bomb. Joker 2 was a horrific $200 million bomb in the theater. The Mad Max Furiosa was horrific bomb. So, for anybody to say they still have figured out what a successful film is, it's still not true. But we're starting to see other filmmakers, the ones again that are more passionate, that feel that there needs to be a story to be told, trying different ways. Seed funding. So there's a studio now that's come out of Utah called Angel Studios. And what it is, it's a crowdfunding studio. And they literally last week just went public on the New York Stock Exchange. And they have become one of the most successful movie studios. And they have a little bit more of a conservative angle. So, they do more like biblical movies. They tend to do movies that are more patriotic. But the thing is, their model is something not to be ignored. And we also see like filmmakers like Robert Rodriguez. He has now adopted that model, because even when I was at South by Southwest, we were hearing people like James Cameron and Michael Bay complaining that they can't even get films done. I know Michael B. Jordan had a project and he couldn't even get it done. So, what they say in Hollywood is, no one gets fired for saying no. But the fact is, when you're a creative, you're going to want to create no matter what. And when you're a filmmaker, even if you scrap together whatever you could to make a film, making a film is hard. But filmmakers are probably the most passionate people that I know on this planet, because they have a story to tell and they want to get it out. And we're also in this age where technology is at our advantage. You don't need millions of dollars to make a film anymore. You have the cameras. I wish I had this equipment when I was 15 years old. I would have been like a kid in a candy store. No, I had an old VHS camcorder and 2 VCRs to cut between tape, and the footage looked horrible, but I still was making something. So, and now we have AI on the scene, with AI being a tool. Again, it doesn't matter what you have. And again, I kind of learned this through Unscripted, about storytelling, because I met with some filmmakers and they're like, well, I can't make this film unless I have a $2 million budget minimum. And I'm like, dude, I worked on a show where I had a $30,000 per episode budget, and it's airing at 8 o'clock primetime television next to the scripted series, and pulling in the same amount of ratings. Why is that? Why is my super cheap show still competing with your multi-million-dollar scripted program? And that's what I mean. It comes down to story. If you know how to tell a story and you have these tools at your disposal, and we also have a distribution system now of social media. We have multiple platforms that you can put programming on, or you could do marketing on, and you can imagine having access to, 5 television stations, and you're able to put your show on every single one of them. That's how social media is. I can put it on Instagram, I can put it on TikTok, put it on LinkedIn, I can put it on everything. So really, through this chaos, this chaotic sort of situation that we're in, there is loads of opportunity. And we know that media is changing. It's always going to be evolving. And a lot of people still kind of want to adhere to the system as like the networks are the only ones allowed to give me permission. But it's like, no, that's not true anymore. You can greenlight yourself. So I think we kind of have to get out of this mindset that we need permission to make something. And if we are smart enough and creative enough, you can find an audience. A perfect example is my own Instagram channel. I started that in May of last year. And here I am sitting with you in South Africa. So to say that it can't be done, it can be done.
I wonder, though, if it's not more a question of credibility, in terms of, like I'll always talk about this idea of self-publishing a book versus having the book picked up by a publisher. And it still feels like the book picked up by a publisher is given a boost in credibility.
Yes.
As opposed to self-publishing.
Right.
Sitting here and doing a podcast that a channel didn't commission, because does your voice really matter? outside of them opening that door. So I think there's going to be a constant battle that people will face.
Yes.
Is the idea, like me doing this podcast is a classic example of screw it, let's do it.
Yeah.
You know, we have the resources, we have the space, and we will find an audience.
Yes.
Or not. But I always said that when I was getting ready to start this podcast, that it was going to be more of a therapy session for me to just really get out what I am thinking about a thing and to really share and hear the thoughts of whoever we're talking to. But I do think people are going to struggle, especially like, and again, back to, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Newsroom show with Jeff Daniels.
Yeah. I've loved it. Great show.
One of my favorite TV shows, I think, of all time, really. But the thing that gets it, I also come from, I'm not a journalist by any kind of profession, but I had an opportunity to work in a newspaper environment and write into that newspaper. But the idea of real news that is coming from a trusted source that has got a experienced, honest chief editor, making sure that the quality, I mean, if I see a rest in peace celebrity person online, I don't just go and repost that quickly. I'm looking for who else is saying it, and is that place
is that true or not? Is it not fake news?
So it's kind of, for me, coming down to a credibility thing. So as much as I agree with you that people and especially creatives and creators should take the reins now and start to make things, I think the struggle that we're still facing is that, will it find an audience? Will it be monetizable? Because ultimately we still have to, it's the business side of things. Money did go into it. I mean, if all of us got together, we've got the cameras, we've got the people, we need to buy the food to feed the crew on that day.
100%.
So there's a couple of things that's still cash related.
Right.
So monetization cannot be ignored.
Correct.
And I think because I was listening to you over the weekend at Avi Josie as well when you were talking about, because I'm not sure if you recall, but the questions you were getting in the room, some of them were related to money. How do we access capital? How do we find funding? How do we come to America and get those dollar people to give us Africans some money? That's really the need amongst our creatives. And while we can say, I mean, here as Snow Creations, we're like very happy to open our doors and say, we've got cameras here. We've got lights here. We've got post-production facilities. And we open that door and we welcome people in. But there's certain things that they still need beyond that.
100%.
And so my worry, and I'm just trying to get you to almost just tell me your thoughts around, yes, we go make it. Yes, we put it online. And let me put a real question to you. I've given you a lot of context.
Yes.
But so you launched your channel at a frustration point. That was the result of almost unemployment for a long period of time. Fast forward from that now, a year and a bit later, 100,000 followers later, is your living coming from your core job anymore? Or are you now having to find your living from producer Patrick, the personality? Like, we book you to come to South Africa, whatever. What has your model started to do now? Because, and what I'm really trying to push for here is this idea that ultimately we got to get paid from somewhere.
Right. So, there's various forms of getting paid. And I think, again, in this idea of we're in this transformation world, let's start with the golden rule. Whoever has the gold makes the rules, right? Where are other places that you can find funding? And where are other places that are hurting? And what I've actually talked to a lot of producers, especially ones that are filmmakers that want to make films, want to make television shows, they're not going to the networks because the networks are just saying no. They're saying no, 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 no. Or Netflix, has all its in-house people. We're just going to go to our Netflix people that we trusted before. So how do you break into the system? But let's look at what else is hurting. Commercials have been devastated. Right? If you go on YouTube, how quick can you hit that skip button, right? The youth doesn't watch commercials. Commercials don't work. Nobody wants to sit for 30 seconds and be like, hey, the laundry detergent. Nobody wants to watch that. But there are still companies that want to sell their product. And so I know a lot of production companies now, I know especially new ones, that are trying to figure out this new model. And this is what I mean. There's opportunity of how do we change this model. The model is going to change. It's not, Netflix is not going to always be Netflix for the next 10 years. Something else is going to come along because there's a need and necessity, right? And the point of storytelling is that stories is something that has been around since the dawn of human time. So storytelling is still going to happen, but what is the medium of that? How do you make it? But if you look at branding is now kind of shifting into this, it used to be called product placement, but you also have a younger generation that is craving authenticity. So even like now, the typical influencers of, 10 years ago are kind of falling by the wayside, because on Instagram, these are people that are putting sort of these best versions of themselves on vacation, take the perfect pose, and it's very inauthentic. And in the same way, you're sort of feeling the same way about the film industry that's being regurgitated. That's why films don't feel, they don't connect emotionally. But brands are still saying, how do I get to a younger audience? And you see brands, easily partnering up with, some young female who does makeup tutorials, and she's getting the same amount of views as the morning show on the broadcast television. And even you're seeing in US broadcast television, they're starting to say, hey, to these big time broadcasters, anchors, they're saying, you don't get a $30 million salary anymore. We're cutting it. Or you're not getting a pay increase. They're seeing their salaries decrease, which means that the marketers, these companies that would normally be advertising, are now pulling their money and investing it somewhere else. And where there's sort of this need and a system that hasn't been created yet, and if whoever figures out this system is going to become the richest person in media, is how do you connect brands with storytelling? Because brands don't know storytelling. But what if there's for example, L'Oreal, which does makeup, to say, okay, we're doing a women's empowerment campaign. How can we pair up with a female director who is doing a women's empowerment movie where we can kind of, again, associate our brand with it? Does Coca-Cola putting a vending machine in the background of your shot, does that buy you an extra, sum of money to continue your show? So that's what I'm saying. There's creative ways, instead of just, knocking on people's doors saying, hey, is there a way that I can make money by doing this? It's probably a little bit harder for people who haven't established themselves, but you also have to remember there are people making YouTube shows, and Netflix is going on YouTube and seeing these popular shows that are made by Gen Z film students. I can think of the show Broad City. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's these two girls that were in college, and they were making these funny sketch comedy shows, and then it got picked up by Comedy Central, and they became very successful. So YouTube, also look at YouTube. YouTube won the streaming war already, no matter how you slice it. YouTube has double the amount of viewership that Netflix has globally, worldwide. And it is a entry point where anybody can put something up. So again, like, if you have 8 billion people on this planet, you're going to find an audience. But the means of how we do it, the traditional methods, sometimes it doesn't take a lot to get something going. But if you are established, if you do have a media company, then it's really, and you have sort of a portfolio that you can start showing, it's just thinking outside of the box now. Because again, this revenue model that worked perfectly for 70 years has been destroyed. And the studio system is trying to go back into a pre-COVID model. But if anybody is forward thinking, it's like, what is this new model that hasn't been formed yet?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think with regards to like the audience having a say in what it is, I think what we need to maybe see happen more, and I don't know how they do this, to be honest with you, but you find that if you create your following, like a filmmaker becomes known for a style, like a Tarantino, like everybody loves that style, then you can maybe get your audience involved in getting your next project made, like the Angel Studio model.
And Robert Rodriguez. But also remember, Robert Rodriguez, when he filmed his first film, El Mariachi, he did it on a $7,000 budget. Do you know where he got most of his capital from? medical research. He was testing drugs, testing, I think, like cholesterol medication, and he raised $4,000 by doing that. And that's what I mean about the scrappiness. And that's what I mean about, like, filmmakers will do what they need to do to raise money. And now he's Robert Rodriguez, and now he's making films, and now he has the opportunity to expand. Look, most filmmakers start from nothing. You know, Christopher Nolan started from nothing. You know, and anybody thinks that Steven Spielberg just shows up one day. It doesn't. Like, any filmmaker that has had a success has had a struggle. But also in that struggle is where you find the most creativity. When you are limited is actually when the best of you comes out. Perfect example is Jaws. The shark broke. And Jaws became one of the most successful monster movies of all time because the shark broke and because they were creatively limited. And then all of a sudden, this thing came out that was far better than what they could have ever done.
I have found myself in some rooms with fellow filmmakers in South Africa. And I have all but dared this group to come together to make a film. Just let's get one made where, you know, yes, it's a really good DOP. Yes, it's a really good gaffer. Yeah, you know, everybody's in the room.
Yeah.
You can make a movie, guys, right now, right here. And nobody's taken the challenge yet. And you were on your platform. You promoted a thing that you were getting involved with. I think it was called Share.
Oh yes,
and I think it had a very similar sort of approach and thinking where let's get together as the different resources, make a thing happen, and let's share in the
profits
of that, right?
Right.
And then I don't know, I'm just going to put it out there. Like, you at some point announced that you were no longer part of it. Are you okay to share a little bit about what happened there?
No, we're going to pass on that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got you. Yeah, because I mean, and again, I'm going to just say some stuff. You don't have to, but I find it peculiar, I must be honest, because it feels to me, and I brought this up earlier with the investor thing, it feels like too often egos get in the way.
Yes.
Like somebody has to be chief. Somebody has to lead this thing. And of course, no organization and no effort will ever be able to have success if there isn't a decision maker, there isn't a definitive structure. I get that. But I just worry that the need to own a thing, the need to be the guy amongst the thing is what's holding us back. And as much as I respect the fact that you can't talk about it, for whatever those reasons might be, I just suspect that that's probably what's the problem. Like, you know, the idea to bring a whole group of people and say, work for free, or let's come together on this one and back end payments. And nobody wants to do it.
Look, I won't say there's anything wrong with Share's model. You know, there was a disagreement between me and sort of the people that run Share, and that's what I'll just kind of leave it at that. You know, I'll let them continue with their business, and I wish them well. But you know, what you're saying is not just a problem limited here. And I actually had the opportunity to travel this summer, and I traveled actually throughout Asia. And especially when I got to Japan, I found out I met with a lot of anime producers, and what they told me shocked me, that out of these actual anime companies that are literally making hand-drawn animation, they only get 10% of the profits that their product makes. The other 90% goes to the global companies and distribution. And that's wrong. You know, that is the artist getting scraps for the art that they create. And so I still believe in Share's model. The ego thing, you know, that's up to the individual. But this idea that the problem is, again, when you have limited opportunities to, and I've actually gone through this myself, of the self-sacrifice you do, because again, you're passionate. I will do anything to get my show on the air. Okay, it's either I sign this contract that is going to severely limit me, but if I don't sign it, the opportunity is gone. And it's these devil bargains that everybody is making with themselves, because I'd rather, to your point, I need to pay my people. And because there's limited distribution now, and you have just, limited conglomerates that kind of hold the reins to all of this, they have the leverage. It's funny now because anybody's talking about strikes now, it's impossible because the leverage is all in the studio's favor at this point. There's nothing, they already cut the industry out for the most part. So, that's where I'm really kind of, again, championing this idea of don't feed into the system because it's just going to screw you. It's better to make something on your own and have full ownership of it and have it be a success and say, okay, well, maybe it's not making money, but it's got 10 million views on YouTube. And then Netflix goes, we want your show. And you go, well, if you want it, you're going to pay for it because it's mine. Yeah. Because what Netflix's model is right now is they want to own all of their material. And a big problem right now is we've always had residuals in Hollywood where the money gets back to the writers and the producers because shows get syndicated. And what Netflix is doing now is the shows and like Friends or things that are on Netflix, they're slowly cutting them. They're saying, okay, and I'm going to put a Netflix show that I have full ownership of. And that way I don't have to pay anybody. Yeah. And I don't have to pay those licensing fees. So, and that from a corporate standpoint, that's their way of doing it. And that's the way that they keep the money internally. So again, but at the same time, their material is suffering. So you can make better material outside that system if it's not whittled down by the creators, the tech oligarchs, whoever we want to see that are, trying to put their thumbprint on the material. Even Netflix, their writing has actually gotten worse. And there was a big thing that came out about how they're writing for a 2-screen audience, meaning somebody that is on their phone and Netflix is in the their show is on the background. And what used to be the biggest no-no in screenwriting is see, not say. Yeah. So like if somebody's frustrated, I'm going to smash a plate. But now Netflix shows or somebody's going, I'm frustrated. Yeah. And it's making the product worse. But it's still not the same. But then you go on not Amazon, you go on Apple, and Apple, they just see their shows as part of their marketing budget. So they just throw money at it, but they're still making high quality shows like Severance or the morning shows. And if it's a high quality show, I will not be on my phone. I will be engaged. So that model of storytelling of you could still engage an audience. And that's why I'm kind of promoting, hey, make it outside of the system and make them pay for it if they want it. Yeah. And if they don't want to pay for it and you do have an audience, you're still going to get more opportunities. Then all of a sudden, like I said, brands start saying, hey, can we do something with your show? Can we sponsor it in somehow? You will still, if you are getting eyes on your product, you will attract attention. And you asked about myself and my own model. I don't do anything on Instagram to promote. I'm actually adamant about, being in the pockets of anybody because I feel that I want my truth to be as authentic as possible. But at the same time, has it opened doors of opportunity? Have people reached out to me to help them with consulting, to help design programs on the side? For producer Patrick, what it has brought, the attention that has brought, has benefited me, not directly, but indirectly.
Yeah, and I think what my question at the time was really trying to get at was the idea that you've pivoted, and your life is now it's still in the same world,
yes,
but it's in a different area,
yes,
and you've almost like you're not on the set of a Amazing Race anymore,
yes,
and there's a certain love that pulled us in that direction,
yes,
that has now almost been taken away.
It was, but I think we were kind of discussing this before, when. It's not to say that when the plug was pulled on me, and the last show I did was called, the last big show that I was an executive producer of was called Fight to Survive. We filmed it in Fiji. It was an amazing show. It was for Roku. And, I saw that through the last delivery of the final episode through post. And then that's when the well went dry for me. And as I said before, you're taught to grieve loved ones. And when it was months later and I'm still out of work, you start going through those stages of grief. You start going through anger. I'm mad at everything. I hate the fact that I can't, because I'm so upset that I can't do what I love. And then you start bartering. And I did barter. I managed to get on another Discovery show that my agent called me. It's like, I only have this show. It's not your typical role, but it's 3 steps down, and it's a 40% pay cut. Do you want it? And of course you're desperate. So you're in the grief stage of bartering. So you go, yes, please take it, anything. But while I was on that show, I hit the final stage of grief, which was acceptance. Of all of a sudden I'm on this show and the executive producer is a worse executive producer than me and is making really bad calls that I would never make, that I would make. And I knew they were bad calls. And I'm like, why am I listening to this guy? Why am I begging for scraps of my old job? And then all of a sudden it was like a euphoric experience of release. And I had realized that I had this amazing career that taught me amazing things. But I am ready for something new now. If it is over, I'd rather not just kind of beat the dead horse of what it used to be. I had a great run. I don't look back at my career and regret anything. I had one of the coolest careers of all time, and I got to work in adventure programming. I got to work for Discovery Channel. I've been so many places. I've been to Greenland. I've been to the Arctic Circle. I've been, shooting guns with Alaskan rednecks. I've been with Jennifer Lopez traveling through South America. And everything was an experience that helped shape who I am today. I think one of the benefits of working on Unscripted is I could work with anybody from A-list celebrities down to, kids that are trying to learn. And I've kind of developed, I don't want to say developed a personality, but I have a very huge empathy and understanding of human behavior better than anybody else, because I've seen people in very stressful situations, and I see, and I've watched a lot of people respond to things through the ages. And when I hit that level of acceptance, you start saying, I am ready for something new. Maybe I am, to myself, going back to what I was saying before about regurgitated films and movies, when you're doing the same type of programming over and over again, it's like being on a cricket field. The field doesn't change. The game is always different, but the field doesn't change. And maybe it's time for a different point of view. And maybe if my job now is to help other filmmakers, which actually feels, it gives me more purpose than to just make a television show, to put it on air. And I think that's the ego thing too. It's like my show, my movie, my something. But this is something where I get, on social media, you get messages back of, I can't tell you how many messages I get all the time of, thank you, this is helping me. And that feels more profound than anything I've ever done before. And so that makes me say, I'm going to continue on as producer Patrick. And again, the opportunities, even when I wasn't looking for them, are showing up. And I'm here in South Africa now speaking with you. I just spoke at Avi Josie. And you know what? Now I know a shitload of producers in South Africa. And now it's like, hey, I know you guys. And the one thing I love about Africa is there's so much storytelling here. And I know sort of the problem has always been, and I'm starting to see the problems that have always existed, which is, places that are so rich with story have never been able to go global. And even seeing South Korea change that kind of model where Squid Games came out of nowhere with unknown actors and a dubbed show and a Korean programming. 10 years ago, I would have said, you want me to watch a Korean program? That's crazy. But now we're in this different place where the best storytellers can enter the system. And that's what I mean. If you have a great story, you're going to find an audience. And so it's like, yeah, you know what? For the first time, I think maybe about the beginning of this year, I started seeing the world positive again, instead of negative and depressed, of mourning the old system, because I see a new system developing and emerging.
And are you, Patrick Caligiuri, happy?
Am I happy? Yeah, I've always been happy. And that actually I'll get into a different story now that actually doesn't really relate to what's going on, but it plays into it. So I used to be the egotistical producer, believe it or not. Yeah, you could have shoved coals up my ass and I've been shitting diamonds. Like, I was wound tight. I was, get this done. And something happened to me 10 years ago that changed how I produce. And I was doing a pilot for CNN, and it was with a very famous musician, and it was a music show, so we were meeting with other very high profile musicians that, like, it's like you would be at a kid in a candy store to be doing these interviews. And I thought it was going to be a huge show. And I get a call from home, and my mom is diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. But, I'm like, okay, well, my family's on the East Coast of the United States. I'm on the West Coast. So there's a 6-hour flight between where we live. But I still was like, well, but the show that I'm doing, I can't leave and go home right now. This is an opportunity. And that's something that we always get in the mindset of like, I can't let go of this. And mom understands. Mom's going to be fine. And I was in a state of denial until I got that one call where it's like, get home now. And I got home and 3 days before she died. And she was very sick. And I have siblings. They all were with her this entire time. They all had final talks. They all had this moments with my mom, but my mom was too sick. She recognized me. She was so happy I was there, but she died 3 days later. And that's when I realized everything that I was obsessed with the week before was worthless. It didn't matter. And that changed my life forever. And I say it's the last lesson my mom ever taught me was, you know what? Here's what's important in life. Unfortunately, within a year, I lost my father in an accident. So I am all of a sudden just like completely crushed. And at the same time, what's even crazier is 6 months later, my son was born. So I just went through this drastic, breakneck life change. And all of a sudden, I realized my family is the most important thing to me. Making films and TV. And this is where, understanding where my friend committed suicide, like, he didn't have that understanding that I had, which helped me create Producer Patrick. And so I guess my whole point is when your priorities shift and you realize truly what is important in your life, all this equipment and stuff, it's fun, it's passion, but you put your family first, you put your health first, and no matter what bad times you go through, there's always going to be a dawn. We're always going to go through rough times, but you just hold on and you'd be surprised what's at the end of the tunnel.
What's your son's name?
My son's name is Jackson.
Is he the only kid?
No, but I have a daughter named Madeline too, and they're 8 and 6 now. Wow. And they're my everything.
And wifey?
And the wifey, funny enough, I got to share this story with you. So my wife and I, our honeymoon was here in Africa. Oh, wow. And when we got married, we immediately got on a plane and we flew into Joburg. Okay. And our first official date as husband and wife was actually the butcher shop in Sandton. And and then we ended up going through to Zambia, Botswana, and Namibia. So it's to be back here is actually pretty special because it was 11 years ago that we got married, and and I have to, God bless her. Her name's Jennifer, and she's been my ride or die because while I was doing the Producer Patrick's things, she's not in the entertainment industry. She's a PR executive, but it got to be hard times between the two of us, and it was difficult, with her dealing with me being depressed and not knowing where my career was, and she's stuck with it, and to have somebody in your corner rooting for you and being your champion, there's no better person that I want to be with. And that also helped me. Also, she's also my PR representative. Like, she's the one who's just like, don't be a liability when you're online doing your producer Patrick stuff. She helps me. She helped, kind of guide me and develop it a little bit too. So she's magnificent.
That's great. And I hope you didn't take her to the CBD like you took yourself the other day. I remember you were telling me the story of you went to Johannesburg into the city itself to try and get some establishing shots.
That was maybe I was a little naive there. I bring a drone with me, especially for my content, because I love drone shots. Yeah. It's like, it also, I love the production value, and maybe that's the producer in me. Like, I can't just make a video of just myself. I have to like put B-roll on it and make it, shoot morning shots and get, I wanted to get this shot of downtown Johannesburg, and I've never been to downtown Johannesburg. I think a downtown is like any other city. So I get an Uber, and I just looked at, I was like, where would I be able to launch a drone? Oh, there's a park right in the middle of the city. Take me to this park. And we get to this park, and the driver's like, why are you getting out of here? I'm like, oh, I'm going to go fly a drone. He's like, don't get out of here at all. You are going to be in trouble in 30 seconds the minute you get out of this car. But also just goes to say how wonderful South Africans are. He's like, you want to shoot a drone? I got a spot for you. You want to shoot the city? And he actually took me to a place where I actually got the shots. But yeah, I think he saved my life.
Yeah, no, that man saved your life. You owe him a lot. But South Africans are really the best.
Yes.
But of course, there's certain places you just shouldn't go to. So quickly, to wrap it up, tell me a little bit about the opportunity in the UAE and where you're heading off to and what comes next.
So I, again, through producer Patrick and meeting more producers globally, I attracted the attention of the National Media Office of the United Arab Emirates. And the Emirates is a very cool place because they are seeing themselves as they want to develop. They're an oil nation that wants to be off oil by 2030. And obviously they've made strides in the travel industry. Emirates is now a global hub in Dubai. And I think they're saying, okay, well, there's a lot of investment in media, especially new media, especially where are we going? And I think I caught their attention because I'm a person who talks about where media is going. And they reached out to me, and they're putting a convention together in December, and it's going to be called the Bridge Convention. And what it is they're billing it as like the Davos of media. It's going to be in Dubai, December 8th through 10th, right after the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. And they want to bring 200 countries together, no politics, to figure out where are we going? How do we do journalism in an age of misinformation? And that's just like one part of it. How do we do film and television? What does media look like? What does, we have short forms coming in, and they're inviting all nations that are developing media to come in and have these I don't want to call it just like a South by Southwest, but this massive summit. And it's the first time there's ever been a media summit that really is looking forward. And that is what grabbed my attention. And they said, hey, do you want to be a part of this? Do you want to come on as a media advisor? And I said, absolutely. And, I know really relatively not much about the Middle East, but I do know what they're experiencing is very similar to what is happening in Africa, where we have stories of the Middle East. Every time we see a movie in the Middle East, it's about, a military raid or, bombing something or a CIA operation. It's never about, there's millions of people that live there that have daily lives and experiences and real stories to tell. They probably have, they have stories that they grew up with, much like there are stories here that many people grew up with that are well known within the region, but not many people know globally, but are really fantastic stories. So I want to be an advocate for that and not say that, Hollywood is become a global idea. It's no longer Los Angeles anymore. And they want to build, and at the same time, they want to build a global media hub and say, hey, what happens is we have Dune come in, they shoot, and then they leave. We have Mission Impossible come in, they shoot, and they leave. Why can't a studio come and film here? What do we need to build for an infrastructure? we'd love studios to come and shoot just more than just like a desert scene, and or like a shot of Tom Cruise running up and down a building. And I was like, you know what? Let's go. I'm in. Let's do it. And so really this convention comes first. And that's why I'm here meeting producers, production companies. They also want to invest. Talking about money and where money is coming from. They have a fund where they're saying, hey, maybe we can share in the profits because we actually see that, the Hollywood system isn't working, but great animation is coming out of Africa. Going back to the anime thing, what we're starting to see is also a blend of cross cultures. We're seeing African folklore now being in the style of anime, which can travel and reach an audience better than maybe how if it was just made by a local production company here. What I'm also seeing is like even when I went to South Korea, I met with a bunch of South Korean producers who just got back from India because they're adapting the K-drama model to Indian television in Bollywood. So it's like we're sharing models that work, that grab audiences, but still maintaining your cultural identity. And so that's a way we're getting more global, but also in a way where, we're really starting to grab audiences and sharing audiences stories through familiar means.
Wow. Well, I gotta say that it's been interesting. I remember when I first caught you, I think I caught some of that early content about the frustrations and the blow the world up kind of stuff. And I'm glad for you that it has turned into a very positive direction. I know a lot of your stuff initially had to highlight the problems.
Yes.
Which I believe we've done to a large extent by now.
And there was a while that people were calling me doom and gloom. Oh, it's doom and gloom producer. But, any storyteller will tell you, you can't go high unless you go low first, right? Your character can't be a hero unless they go through the mud. And now I think we've now identified the problem, but now it's time to get healthy. We identified the sickness, but now it's time to find the remedy. And that's where I think the stage we're at right now.
And I think that's what I'm loving. I'm loving because, as producers, our jobs is to solve problems and to make things work. And so I'm glad that we've done the job of identifying, first admitting that we had a problem.
Right.
Then fully unpacking that. Mm-hmm. And as you come to places like Avi Josie and the different events that you go to, and now with your UAE opportunity, I certainly look forward to watching what it is that the solutions that come off these things. And as you bring it to us through your Producer Patrick platform. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Well, I appreciate you being on the show. I hope it's a good episode.
I'm not, one of the things I said I was going to do with this is just be honest, and this was freestyling at its best. I think we pulled it off.
You got it, buddy. Thanks, Sean.
Take care. We good?
And scene.